Hi, this is Todd and welcome to this episode of Reframe Yourself. Now, this episode is called Australia Day, Change the Date. Now, I'm sure that this is going to get a couple of feathers being ruffled by the end of this episode, but as Ned Kelly once famously said, such is life. So let's get into this. Now, before we start the episode, I want to tell you something very important. And that is number one, that I respect every human being until they give me a reason to not. At this point, they then have to win my respect back. 2, I have friends from all over the world from different nations, with different cultures, different skin colors. And 3, I also believe what happened to the Indigenous Australians, in fact, all Indigenous cultures around the world that suffered during an era of expansion and colonization to be a horrible thing. And 4, I have friends that sit on both sides of the discussion that we're about to have. Now, before I jump into this episode and ruffle those feathers, it's important to take a look about how we got here, because trying to create a better future without understanding the past is stupidity in full swing. It's believed that the earliest people that inhabited this land was around 60,000 to 125,000 years ago, when the original occupants of this land traveled here from what is now Africa. Now, this was possible because of different climates, lower sea levels, and of course, different land conditions. Now, during the 1600s, we had a lot of European activity in Australia, with the first recorded landing being in 1606 by a Dutch seafarer named William Jason. Now, Jason landed and encountered multiple attacks by natives at various locations on the western coast before coming across friendly natives at his final stopping spot. Now, unfortunately, relations broke down as Jason took advantage of natives, and then there was a lot of bloodshed that followed. Now, the Dutch frequented Australia, or New Holland as it was called, a lot over the years because of a seafarer named Hendrik Brouwer, who discovered a fast route from Europe to Indonesia via a strong westerly wind around Australia called the Roaring Forties. Now, in 1770, James Cook was the first European to map out the eastern coast of Australia, and it was in August of that year that he claimed the east coast for Britain and named it New South Wales. Bit of history, right? Now, with Britain losing penal colonies in America, as you know, they took their independence, and with a lot of French activity in the Pacific, their sights soon turned to colonizing this new land, which is called Australia. So let's take a moment right now to consider what Australia would be like right now if the British didn't move forward and it was the French who colonized Australia. Oui. Let that sink in. It may have been croissants instead of meat pies that we eat on a regular basis. So, next up, we had Captain Arthur Phillip, with strict instructions to make good relations and form a good friendship with the natives, who landed in Botany Bay in mid-January 1788, but then decided to move to a new location on the 24th of Jan. This was stopped though because of bad weather, and they weren't able to move until the 26th of January. Now, over the next 100 years, the British colonized more and more areas of Australia, and during this time, there were many wars between the natives and the Europeans. And a big killer to the natives, according to historian Geoffrey Blainey, was the outbreaks of smallpox, measles, influenza, and other new diseases that swept from one Aboriginal camp to another. The main conqueror of Aborigines was to be disease and its ally, demoralisation, Blainey said. The smallpox epidemic was also recorded in Sydney in 1789, which wiped out about half of the Aborigine. And there was a debate whether this was from interaction with Indonesian fishermen or if it was a deliberate tactic of the British. And this is something that will just go, as an unknown moving forward because we don't know. But during 1829 to 1830, smallpox appeared again and killed 40 to 60% of the Aboriginal population. Now look, there were peaceful clans, and there were also clans that fought violently against the British colonizations, with plenty of death on both sides of the line. Now, between 1788 and 1868, approximately 161,000 convicts were transported from Britain to Australia, and they were colonised around Tasmania, Western Australia, and New South Wales. Now, this brings us to the whole joke about us being a nation full of convicts, really. Well, actually, I am a convict, but moving on. So look, during the 1800s, we also had the find of gold, which brought people from all around the world seeking to find their own fortune. Think about this. This also brought a fair share of lawlessness, of course. It was kind of like a big bubbling cauldron filled with lots of different ingredients, filled all the way to the top. It's really just a big mess waiting to happen if you actually think about it. Now, many horrible things have happened to Indigenous Australians since the 1700s, ranging from kids being stolen from parents, poisoning, savage oppression, all the way up to even just recently in 1926 when a dingo trapper was killed by an Indigenous male, which then caused vengeance attacks, which had 30 people killed just near Alice Springs. What's extremely important to take note of right here about our history is the cause and effect that was in action. One attack led to another, which then created a vengeance attack, and so on and so forth. You can imagine the hate between races that would have built up, each group wanting to come out on top of the other. I want to take a moment right now to apologize to my native Indigenous brothers and sisters for the wrongdoings of the settlers of this country, what they did to the natives that were outside of vengeful actions. Now, what's undeniable about human history is violence, with powerful forces coming into and then taking over new lands. We've got the Persian Empire, which grew to conquer 44% of the world, entering countries, exterminating and enslaving locals around 500 BCE. The Roman Empire was a powerhouse up into the 1400s. Once again, they would come in, conquer new lands and take what they wanted. In 1521, we had the Spanish come into what is now known as Mexico, and over a period of time, they decimated the natives. You know, does anybody today call themselves Aztecs? No. In 1492, we had Christopher Columbus, who stumbled upon what's now known as America. And between that time and 1900, the native numbers went from an estimated 10 million all the way down to 300,000 or less. Now, there was a lot of pain and suffering that has crafted the world that we live in today. When we know the past, we can now respectfully look towards the future and the present. And this is where I'm probably going to ruffle a couple of feathers. So there's a saying that I like, and it goes like this: the past is not our future unless we choose to live there. I've been doing coaching and trainings for getting close to a decade now. And a lot of people that get stuck and they have a trend of living in the past and letting that affect their present and their future. And I've worked all over Australia as well doing door-to-door sales over the years, and I've met a lot of people, a lot of people. And look, I've heard what a lot of Indigenous Australians have to say at times. This is really, really important because what they say represents what they think, and what we think represents what we believe. And here's the thing about beliefs, about the stories that we allow to run our lives. Whether they are right, whether they are wrong, whether they are true, or whether they are false, they either empower us or they destroy us. If you believe that people come here to invade, conquer, and commit acts of genocide, and that means that you should be angry, hateful, and violent, well, that's not empowering for you, and it's not empowering for anybody else. Now, get me 100% right here. I respect the fact that Aboriginals were here first. I respect the fact that this date is perceived as a disrespect to a lot of natives because they equate the date with pain and think that people celebrate an invasion. The fact, though, is that that's not true. Australians celebrate the beautiful multicultural country we live in today, not the things that have happened over the last 250 years. We don't celebrate the date. We celebrate the country we live in here and now. Now, a few really important points that I want to make here are these. 1, the date change is a reasonable request. Now, whether Indigenous Australians would be satisfied with just a date change is questionable. And bear with me here. The reason I say that is because there is a lot of emotion and identity looped into the people that go out and protest and do these things. Now, I'm not 100% certain that a date change and a day of apology would be enough to have people happy. I don't know. I think there are some people that are so filled with hate and anger and that are consumed by their convictions about right, wrong, and what should be, that they would find a new problem to let their negative feelings flow into. That's just how it is. But who knows, right? Number 2, I don't believe that Australia Day should be abolished. Now, this is really important because whilst people go about protesting and spreading hateful feelings towards non-Indigenous, whilst, sprouting a flag and declaring that this day is an invasion day and genocide, the fact is that's not what Australia Day is about. Now, I'm sorry if some of you get upset by what I'm about to say right here, but to have the belief that people celebrate invasion and genocide, or that the day is even remotely resembling that, is fucking stupid. Let's call a cucumber and not sugarcoat it. Australia Day is a day where people celebrate the now, not the past. In the clip I'm about to show you in a second, you're going to see people filled with anger and hate, raging against the country they currently live in. Look, I'm sorry, but I don't support anybody that goes out spreading anger or hate. We already have enough of that in this world today. When we have somebody like Tarneen Onus-Williams, who's an organiser of the Melbourne protests, who openly says, fuck Australia, I hope it burns to the ground. Well, I don't know about you, but something isn't right here. She's an executive member of the Youth Council, which supposedly received $875,000 last year from taxpayers' dollars, and she's out there spreading such hateful things about the country we live in today. There are a lot of people that get behind this stuff, they get behind it. But then what do? They go back to enjoying their creature comforts of the 21st century, of the country we live in right now. I'm sorry, but if you're one of those people, you are a walking contradiction and you need to wake up to yourself. #stop the hate. Number 3, if nothing was to change, we have to change. Look, for me, I've been through some shit in my life and I've projected that out onto the world and onto people that I've come across. For a long time, I did this. It cost me time from my life as I sat in a prison cell. I was angry, I was hateful. My life changed for me when I stopped blaming everyone and everything. And that's just a simple damn fact. This lesson for me came as I was staring down the barrel of a 10 to 15 year sentence for something I didn't even do. So I know what it feels like to be judged before people even know you. I know what it feels like to not feel valued or respected. So if nothing was to change, my question is, what then? Do we just keep protesting and spreading hate? Does that get what we want? Really, what do we really want? What do you really want? What's the outcome? What's the end game? By the way, this is the thinking section. So we think. What if we do get a date change and a date of apology/respect, and the natives, Australians, and all the people participate in this day? By the sounds of what Tarneen Onus-Williams is saying, that won't satisfy her. She wants to see everything burn. If nothing changes, then we have to change. Because a lot of Indigenous people only makes the stereotyping stronger by doing stupid shit, which, mind you, a lot of damn people do all around the damn world. It's not just Indigenous, everyone does this. Why is it when people think of Indigenous, they think of people drunk on the streets, or people not working, or people out there causing fights and stealing, or people sniffing paint and petrol? Where does this come from? Why do so many Indigenous live up to this stereotyping? So instead of putting so much damn energy into changing dates and spreading anger and hate, divert the energy into breaking through these damn stereotypes and helping our brothers and sisters live good lives with good health and good education. Yes, I said brothers and sisters because we are all human beings, and if we were all blind, we would not judge nor associate by race or skin color, but by how people treat us and make us feel. Therefore, putting that energy into transforming the youth into those that are unfortunately living up to those stereotypes would be an amazing thing and would create a fundamental change. Remember this, at any given moment, we need to be aware of what we're focusing on the meaning that we're attaching to it, and what we are then choosing to do, what actions we're choosing to take. Because we are always choosing to focus on what we have or what's missing, on what's going right or what's going wrong, on what's happened in the past, what's happening now, what's going to happen in the future. What we then do is we then give those thoughts a meaning, which leads to some kind of action. This is really important. Whether that be going down and drowning our sorrows with alcohol at the pub, taking drugs, going out there, writing a nice piece of music, picking up the phone, making some sales calls. This is really important. We have to control those 3 things: Focus, meaning, and action. Focus, meaning, and action. So to my non-Indigenous brothers and sisters, remember our history and be cognizant of the fact that a lot of hurt and pain was brought down upon Native Australians. To my Indigenous brothers and sisters, do not fall into the fold that is cast out by people spreading hate and anger, because spreading more of it does absolutely nothing but create more pain. Like attracts like. Invest that energy into making yourself the best you can be, into improving your community, to helping others. People do not celebrate invasion or genocide, and you have to stop putting yourself into a state of suffering by choosing to believe that. Remember, hurt begets hurt and pain begets pain. Whenever we want things that are new to arise out here, we are the ones that need to change.